Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Terrell. Thank you not only for that kind introduction, but most importantly for your incredible bravery, for being somebody who, in the face of having lived through life's most difficult moments, you have now made a difference in thousands of people's lives. And I cannot thank you enough on their behalf. I want to also thank Dean Speta for your leadership, to Laura Nyrider, who is a fighter every day for justice, and to the entire team at the Center on Wrongful Convictions. You do amazing work, really amazing work, and I've been thrilled to support that work and to believe in that work. I was a student here at this university, at this law school. I have to admit, I walked by the law school library and got the heebie-jeebies. But I know no one's going to force me back in there at this point in my life. But this is a great institution with great people representing it, and I am very proud to be a graduate of this great law school. Before I begin, I want to just briefly speak to yesterday's meeting at the White House with President Biden and Vice President Harris. We had a discussion about federal infrastructure package. To be clear, Illinois is defining what it means to invest in infrastructure in today's economy, and I'm very proud that just yesterday CNBC named Illinois as the best state in the nation for infrastructure investment. I'm very proud of that. And so just briefly, and I will move on to the topic of the day, but I wanted to make sure and address this for members of the press, that through the bipartisan Rebuild Illinois Capital Plan, we're investing $45 million, $45 billion into the greatest foundations for a strong economy, something that'll create jobs for everybody. That's roads and bridges, waterways and airports, community colleges and universities, a stable early childhood infrastructure, something extraordinarily important to me personally, more access to better health care for everyone, confronting climate change, and bringing high-speed broadband to every corner, every block, every corner of this state. 21st century infrastructure package must address 21st century challenges. We're doing that here in the state of Illinois, and that's exactly what the president is working to pass at the federal level. It will be an enormous assistance to all of us. With that, I'd like to turn to why we're all here today. This is a moment when we get to mark truly one of the most joyous and important accomplishments for a fair and safe criminal justice system, and something that should make people all across the state proud. And while I may be the one signing the bills, these consequential pieces of legislation only reached my desk because of the fierce and unrelenting advocacy of so many who are standing here today, and also because of the sacrifices of generations of folks who came before us and who aren't here today. But they came before us in this fight for justice, and they need to be remembered on this day. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the folks that are here and maybe couldn't join us. Let me start with the bill's sponsors. Senator Robert Peters, Representative Justin Slaughter, Representative Kelly Cassidy, Representative Carol Ammons. These lawmakers, as well as Leader Jackie Collins and Senator Adrian Johnson, Senator Maddie Hunter, who are also some with us today. These folks have transformed the pain of so many into progress for everyone. I also want to recognize State's Attorney Kim Foxx, a tireless champion for equity in our justice system, who has long fought to undo the damage done by systemic racism. We wouldn't be here without your work. Thank you. And of course, my partner in governance and a lifelong advocate for restorative justice, someone who's fought for criminal justice reform for her entire career in public life, and that's Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. So earlier this year, I proudly stood with the Black Caucus to sign the criminal justice reform pillars into law, a historic package that marks a transformative step forward in our efforts to dismantle systemic racism in Illinois. Our work is not done, but it was an enormous step forward. In that same spirit, the 4 bills that I am signing today advance the rights of some of our most vulnerable in our justice system. And they put Illinois at the forefront of the work to bring true reform. As of today, Illinois is the first state in the nation, it was mentioned earlier, the first state in the nation to bar law enforcement from using deceptive tactics when interrogating minors. False confessions have played a role in far too many wrongful convictions, leading to painful and often life-altering consequences, as Terrell described. And that rings true for the youth who are most vulnerable to these tactics. My deep hope is that Illinois is setting an example for the entire nation to pass this law in all 50 states. Second, we are encouraging the use of restorative justice practices, moving to a system that repairs harms and addresses trauma. This legislation makes restorative justice a more viable option for survivors, cultivating safer spaces where individuals can speak freely without fear that their words may be used against them. Next, we're addressing mass incarceration, allowing states' attorneys to petition courts to reduce sentences in worthy circumstances. This bill allows prosecutors to consider factors including prison disciplinary records, proof of rehabilitation, and being a reduced risk to society due to age or health. And to ensure that we continue to address mass incarceration and overly punitive sentences. The final bill this morning creates a resentencing task force, bringing experts and stakeholders together to make recommendations about addressing sentences that we would all say, in hindsight, were too harsh. Together, this package of initiatives moves us closer to a holistic criminal justice system, one that builds confidence and trust in a system that has done harm to too many people for too long. Because here's what I know to be true. Long-standing systems that don't shift on their own, they just don't shift on their own. It takes advocacy. I mean, truly change is hard for people to embrace, even when it's the right thing to do. Change is hard. Real change, structural change, comes after meaningful advocacy, study of what hasn't worked and what will, and then adoption of effective policy. Policy that I'm signing into law today, policy that we need to continue to develop for tomorrow. And I know that's already a lot, but as we honor the work to create structural change, I want to touch on another effort that my administration is taking and that I worked with the legislature on to bring about equity and systemic change. This morning, before I arrived, I signed a bill that includes some technical changes to our cannabis legislation, which is aimed at improving equity among those who own cannabis dispensaries. I look forward to the results of the 3 lotteries that will occur later this summer. Very proud of the legislature for the changes that they've made in this law and that we've been able to work together on, and I thank the legislators that are here and those who are not. And with that, I'm very proud to turn this podium over to a true fighter for justice, a friend to everyone in the state of Illinois, but especially to the people of Cook County, and that's our own state's attorney, Kim Fox.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Northwestern and the Center for Wrongful Convictions, for having us here today. I want to thank our sponsors for the package of legislation that's being signed today. And I want to thank the men and women who have been impacted by a history in this county, in this state, in this country, of wrongful convictions, who have, as the governor said, turned their pain into purpose on behalf of others. I want to acknowledge that the progress that we've seen on criminal justice reform has come from the fearless leaders that you see here today, the sponsors, the lieutenant governor, but would not be meaningful or in practice without Governor J.B. Pritzker's steadfast commitment to criminal justice reform, something that I think he needs to always be applauded for, particularly in these times. I try not to get choked up, and I normally don't have notes. Everybody makes fun of me. But this is such a historic day, and the impact and implications for what this means, not just for Illinois, but what it will mean for the rest of the country, is a reason for us to take pause. I also, before I offer my closing remarks, want to thank my team. People say all the time, what is it the prosecutor's business caring about wrongful convictions? I'm questioned, surprisingly, quite regularly, about my adherence to the Constitution of the United States. That somehow the belief in justice, fairness, and equity should only be considered by defense attorneys and not prosecutors. We're here today because these men and women who have been impacted by this system were impacted not by an anonymous system, but by actors, including prosecutors. And if we as prosecutors don't acknowledge the harm that was caused, even if unintentional, by our weight, and leave it to others to fix, we will only half-heartedly get to real criminal justice reform. And so it is, with its complications, being a prosecutor taking on these issues. But I could not do it without the incredible team in our office who does this work, often when it is not understood, even internally. So to Michelle and Becchiani, Ari Jones, Nancy Aducci, for the work that they have done in transforming how prosecutors see themselves as agents of change, I thank you wholeheartedly. This work is incredibly important. You've heard Terrell's words. And in the memory of Michael Saunders, who I had the opportunity to meet 5 years ago, who said when I was running, "Are you going to see us? Do you recognize what has happened to us?" And I promised him then that I would. The work that we're doing, not just on the deceptive practices, but also looking at revisiting sentences, recognizing the harm that mass incarceration has done, not just to the individuals, but to communities and to society as a whole, allows for us, prosecutors, to go back and look with a new lens, to say we must start afresh. That laws where people were convicted and sent to prison for decades, or they wouldn't spend that much time today. We can't just fold our hands and say, oh, well, that's what it was. What this bill does today, it says what it can be and who we should be, that we ought not be trapped by bad policies of the past at a time where we didn't have as much fearless leadership as we have now. And lastly, all of this criminal justice reform package that you have seen today in the history of this governor's administration is about public safety. This is about public safety. Trust and legitimacy in our criminal justice system is how we get people who would be reluctant to engage with us to engage. When we convict the right people by not using tactics to lie to children, the actual person who committed the harm goes free. This is about public safety. You cannot have public safety without justice reform. You cannot have credibility in our systems without acknowledging the harm, forging a path to do better, and doing the work. This puts words into action, and we are fortunate here in Illinois to have such great actors heading our state legislature in our state. And with that, I want to call one of those most fearless advocates, and Senator Robert Peters, who has hit the ground running since he came to Springfield, unapologetic and unafraid to take on systems that for too long had been tinkered around the edges, and he's just here to blow stuff up. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Peters.
So yes, I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District, and to follow such a powerhouse like State's Attorney Kim Foxx, I mean, wow, you know, she's really a legend and a game changer when it comes to public safety in this country. And I'll just say, more people need to realize that she's at the forefront of making our community safer and better and stronger. I want to thank Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, House sponsors, Representatives Justin Slaughter, Kelly Cassidy, and Carol Ammons. But I want to especially thank the tireless organizers and advocates who made all of this happen. The exonerees, the Wrongful Conviction Center, the Innocence Project, who understand that there cannot be justice if those in power are allowed to deceive. And the organizations leading to expand restorative justice, like JJI, CASE, Chief Judge Evans, the Catholic Lawyers Guild, who understand that creating more harm doesn't solve for harm. We have seen the dangers of the failures of tough-on-crime policies. We see it in the faces of the exonerated. We see it in the faces of survivors. We see it on our televisions. We see systemic failures over and over again. We're promised public safety, and yet it seems like it's something we chase over and over again. Chicago sports teams have better draft records than tough-on-crime policies have providing us safety. It is time that we move towards a new era of public safety for all, public safety by the people, public safety that belongs to us. What does this reimagining public safety look like? It looks like what we have done in Illinois. I was just in California visiting future in-laws, I hope. And I bragged to them, because too often when it comes to Illinois, we walk around with a sense of shame. But we should be proud. With this governor, this legislator, with these leaders, we are showing the country what it means to move forward in the 21st century, what it means to lead. I'm sick and tired of us being a punching bag, and we're going to fight back. Amen. I remember standing at the podium at the signing of the Safety Act and said that this is just the beginning, that more work is needed. We are doing that work. We're ending the practice of lying to kids during interrogations, beginning the long journey to end the infamy of the false confession capital of the world. We must not waste the potential of our fellow neighbors by locking them up and throwing away the key. We must not look at the pain of exonerees as one-off stories, but as an example of a system that is both seemingly contradictorily broken and functioning as it has been designed. We must get to the point where your experience in prison isn't a barrier to living your life. We must build a public safety system that is designed to unlock our potential, lift us up, and provide for us. For over 40 years, we have watched as the failed tough-on-crime has said that they speak for victims or survivors, promising to stop and heal the pain. These promises have never been kept. Instead of making survivors whole, these promises have left everyone broken. Restorative justice practices allow another outlet. They allow a space for survivors and those who might have caused harm to seek justice in a manner built on consent and trust. It is not going to be perfect, but come on, neither is the current system. I've been disappointed. Last year, people were out in the streets calling for change. They had yard signs, they had buttons, and here we are in 2021. And it seems people keep trying to push for a new crime bill. It makes me sick. It disgusts me. I think about the fact that I was born in 1985, ripped from my mother's hands because she was a drug addict. I watched my dad, a civil rights lawyer, exhausted every night fighting this tough-on-crime policy. We cannot go back, and we will not go back. We cannot give in to the calls of fear. Everyone loves to quote FDR. And there's a famous quote, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself." If we operate from fear, we give in to fear, we're gonna make things worse, we're gonna make people hurt, we're not gonna lift up our communities. Again, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. So, public safety will not come until it is by and for the people. It is all of us, every zip code in Illinois. No more Chicago versus downstate. Whether you're in Carbondale, Centerville, Naperville, Chicago, you deserve public safety, and it will come, because we will come together to build that beautiful world, one where everyone has a roof over their head, a good school, a good job, a sense of neighborly love and community. That is real public safety for all, and today we make a major step in the right direction. Thank you. Next up, I want to call my ally, my friend, a real champion for when it comes to having safety in our communities and in this state, Representative Justin Slaughter.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Good morning. I am Justin Slaughter, Illinois State Representative of the 27th District. I'd like to once again, thank and commend Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton for their tremendous leadership on criminal justice reform. This administration believes in bringing more fairness, equality, and equity to our criminal justice system. We are grateful for their leadership, proud of their efforts. If you're like me, someone who really pays attention to these matters, you will know this administration is at the forefront of this discussion, and they are national leaders. Yeah. I also want to recognize all of my colleagues from the General Assembly, Senator Peters, Representative Cassie, Representative Ammons, who isn't here but is a House sponsor of one of the bills that we're signing today, Leader Senator Collins, and also Senator Johnson that are here with us today. It's been an opportunity of a lifetime, a blessing to collaborate and work with these great leaders. And of course, it's critical, absolutely critical, that we continue to lift up the work and efforts of our great Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Foxx. She has undoubtedly been and will continue to be at the forefront of criminal justice reform and really reimagining, I guess that's the word I'll use here, reimagining public policy and our public safety strategies. As we forge ahead and continue to grapple with police reform, mass incarceration, and crime reduction, we want to recognize State's Attorney Foxx for being a tremendous catalyst for change, and we appreciate your tireless efforts. This is not easy work at all. I think we're all very excited to continue to work with you, State's Attorney Foxx. Thank you for everything you do. With all that being said, I want to highlight two bills the governor is signing today, HB 3587 and Senate Bill 2122. HB 3587, the governor was talking about this just a few moments ago, creates a task force to study and put forth recommendations for how our state can establish protocols to consider the resentencing of individuals. Our mass incarceration crisis has had such a negative, profound impact on our country. It was important for Illinois, important for our state to take the next step of looking at resentencing policies. We are happy today, we're grateful today that we'll be starting with Senate Bill 2129, which allows state's attorneys to request resentencing, but we know that ultimately other entities can and should be a part of the process, and we want to build towards a system where judges, prison and correctional executives, and even the individuals themselves can request resentencing. And we look forward to the task force doing its work and issuing and providing these critical recommendations. Earlier, I had mentioned that this administration is leading the nation when it comes to criminal justice reform. I've said that before. the governor and lieutenant governor know a great deal of fact-checking sometimes goes into statements when you make these sort of statements. And, oftentimes people do ask, is this true? Are we leading the nation with some of these particular matters with criminal justice reform? We've already said it. Today, with the signing of Senate Bill 2122, we become the first state in the country to ban deceptive practices in the police interrogation of minors. It was so very important for us to do this. Some of you here know this. Our state was really developing a terrible reputation for being the wrongful conviction, false confession capital of the country. But this bill took a very, very unique path through the legislative process. As the bill garnered more and more attention from legislators, we saw that the Illinois State's Attorney Association became supportive of the bill. We also saw that the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police became supportive of the bill. Ultimately, this became, and you can go and look at the votes that we got on the bill, but ultimately this became a bipartisan bill. And what became very, very clear is no matter where you fall on the criminal justice reform spectrum, we all can agree that innocent people should not be serving time in prison. Innocent people should not be serving time in prison. First of all, and we will continue to talk about this is about the lives of those who have been wrongly convicted. This destroys lives, families, communities. So we really want to lift up the work and the efforts of the exonerees. These are the true heroes when it comes to Senate Bill 2122. The exonerees have not only persevered through their life, but many exonerees, like Terrell Swift, have engaged in the government and legislative process to bring about change. Yes. And they are the human faces, the human lives that are the cornerstone of this effort today. As the House sponsor in presenting the bill, I was somewhat reluctant to bring up some of the other reasons and factors for why we needed to do this bill. I honestly felt like destroying lives was reason enough to do the bill. But I remember I was talking with Attorney Michelle Mbecchiani right here, who works for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. And we're going back and forth about strategy. She's like, you know what, let's bring up these other factors. So just to highlight some other things. First of all, fiscal responsibility and public safety. Fiscally, this is a double whammy for taxpayers. Taxpayers have been paying millions and millions of dollars for the cost of these settlements. And then secondly, there's the unnecessary cost stemming from incarcerating an individual who's innocent. And then actually a third factor here, this really didn't come up in committee or on the floor, but really there's a third kind of fiscal impact, mainly absorbed by state's attorneys' offices that need to go back and reopen these cases in an attempt to actually prosecute the actual offender. And speaking about sticking there with the actual offender, shifting to public safety, when the wrong person is incarcerated, the actual offender is still in the community, free to commit further crimes. State's Attorney Fox hit on this. Trust in law enforcement. False confessions diminish the community's trust in law enforcement. As we push forward with police reform, we want and need the community to want to engage and cooperate with law enforcement. All very, very critical factors when you consider the signing of the bill for this today. Now look, I would be remiss if I did not highlight the efforts of the advocacy team that just put so much time and energy and effort into this bill. Rebecca Brown from the National Innocence Project, Laura Nyrider, Center for Wrongful Convictions right here at Northwestern Law School, Lauren Caseberg, also right here with the Illinois Justice Project, and Michelle Mbecchiani from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. This is a very emotional and gratifying day for this team. And Madam State's Attorney Fox, I told Michelle a couple times during the process, as the sponsor, I've never been as prepared as I was for this bill. This team crossed every single T, dotted every single I. Just so honored and proud to work with this advocacy team. Please give them another round of applause. So in closing, and many of us have said this, we have a lot of work to still do, but it's a great day that we're able to celebrate these great accomplishments. And it gives me the pleasure, the honor to introduce to you a friend, a colleague. Representative Cassidy's commitment to criminal justice reform is second to none. Vice Chair of the House Judiciary Criminal Committee, Chair of the House Restorative Justice Committee, I give to you State Rep Kelly Cassidy.
Wow, thank you. I stand here with this team and think any battle, any bar fight, any day, I'll take any comers with these guys at my back. I am so blessed to get to work at this time in this space with these people. I was talking upstairs about the progress we've made and how much further we have to go, and talked about the difference between having some of these conversations 10 years ago where we were having what I call definitional conversations, getting people to understand even the concepts that we were talking about. And I feel like we as a legislature, as a state, are developing a fluency that will allow us to get this right and to move forward and to complete the work of right-sizing this criminal justice system. Today, as Governor J.B. Pritzker signs these 4 important bills, it's so critical to note that while we've made incredible strides in criminal justice reform, so much remains undone, because we are unraveling the effects of decades and decades and decades of lock them up, pile on the punishment, they're guilty of something, retribution-based policies that got us here in the first place. To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle mostly, complaining of reform fatigue, this is what so many of us in the General Assembly and our constituents who have been so impacted by the endless expansion of punitive policies have felt for a very, very long time. We are tired of the impacts of our wrong-headedness for so many years as we built out this system, and it is the honor of a lifetime to be part of dismantling those harms. Senate Bill 2129 represents a huge step forward in that right-sizing. You know, as we incrementally identify and address opportunities for reform, someone is always left behind. With Senate Bill 2129 in place, we can ensure that there's a tool available to ensure that justice applies to all in our system. I've often talked about, as we looked at even juvenile life without parole when that was coming down and the Supreme Court decision was unclear about retroactivity, I started talking about the Tuesday guy and the Wednesday guy. You know, we make these changes, we change the sentencing structure for a crime, and it goes into effect the day this guy signs it. Somebody got convicted the day before and is serving their sentence under the scheme that we thought was wrong the day before, too. So making this tool available is so important, and it does it in a very precise and surgical way. It preserves and protects the rights of victims while acknowledging the need for that safety valve. I'm grateful to my partners who are here today, Representative Slaughter and Senator Peters, and so many others. I feel like, you know, these 4 bills, all carried by Senator Peters, the workhorse of our reform efforts this year. We should call this Robert Peters Day. Happy Robert Peters Day, everyone. To State's Attorney Kim Foxx, so much has already been said. Having her partnership through so many of these battles has been so amazing. She recognized the need for this and brought forth language to accomplish that delicate balance I described. So many over the years, the Senate Bill 2129 is probably the 6th version of a bill that's been around that I've carried for several years with so many partners. And today I want to ask that we all send up prayers for my original partner in this bill. Matt Jones of the State's Attorneys Association isn't here today because he's fighting a very aggressive form of brain cancer. And I just want to ask that we all send up prayers for him and his family and for healing and for peace for them. And as we do so, we also think of the folks that have been harmed by the system and share those prayers for peace for everyone. And with that, another amazing partner for so many years through so many battles. I'm so pleased to bring up our Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton.
Can you send me Matt's number?
Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for that warm reception. I'm the one that stands between the bill signing, so I'm going to get right to it, but I want to thank my friend and former colleague and Justice League sister, Representative Kelly Cassidy, for that introduction and for her incredible leadership. I do want to begin my remarks by pausing just a moment to just say to Brother Terrell, thank you. Thank you for sharing your powerful truth. And I want to acknowledge both the harm that you have experienced as well as the importance of your presence here today at this bill signing, as we collectively work together to repair the harm that has been done to you and to so many others in our state. And of course, I want to thank Governor Pritzker for your tremendous leadership and your work to ensure that our justice system is reflective of our state's values of justice, equity, and opportunity, especially, especially for those in which these values have been historically denied. I'm always proud to stand with you as you lead our state. Our distinguished guests and bill sponsors have already been acknowledged, and you've heard from them. So in the interest of time, I'll just simply say to all of you standing with us today, thank you for your consistency, your advocacy, and your vision for a more just Illinois. I do want to take just one moment to acknowledge Chief Judge Timothy Evans. Thank you for being here. My good friend and a tremendous leader. And I would want to take one moment to also acknowledge the director of the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative in my office, Yaakov Delaney, who is here today. Thank you for doing your work. So in a few short moments, whenever I'm quiet, Governor Pritzker will sign 4 bills that will change the trajectory of individuals, families, and entire communities. And in doing so, he reaffirms our administration's commitment to restorative justice. This moment is about so much more than just reforming a system. This is about repairing the harm that has been done by this system to far too many people, especially those from Black, brown, and indigenous communities. Senate Bill 2122 bans deception in police interrogations of minors because far too many of our young people have been harmed by false confessions as a result of this deception. And this bill is restorative
because it recognizes that when it comes to a child whose brain is still developing, we absolutely must protect them as they are especially vulnerable. Senate Bill 2129 is restorative because it creates an opportunity for resentencing and gives states' attorneys an avenue to recognize the human potential for people to change. And aren't you grateful that we have states' attorneys like Kim Foxx here in Cook County? House Bill 3587 is restorative because the resentencing task force will develop innovative approaches for looking at a person's history while incarcerated, recognizing the steps they've taken throughout their incarceration and how they are working to achieve their best self, whether through education, employment, or other restorative practices. And finally, Senate Bill 64 is restorative because it allows safe spaces for a person who has caused harm to be open and honest and accept accountability in a way that promotes healing and restoration. As a trained restorative justice practitioner for over 2 decades now, I have dedicated my life to bringing people together to heal, collaborate, and work towards change. We must end mass incarceration and continue to reduce our state's prison population. We must invest in communities and better support those who have been harmed, whether by individuals or by systems. And through it all, we must honor one another's humanity and have a bolder vision about what's possible and what true community safety really means. As you've heard throughout this morning, this is what today is really about. And so with that, I invite Governor Pritzker to come forth and sign these bills into law.
Okay, we're gonna, you'll stay up here, the sponsors, Laura Nyrider and others. Okay. Or I'll let you, they're gonna ask you. All right, happy to take any questions from members of the media. I see a few back here.
Governor, I actually would like to hear more about gun violence and what's going on in the city, and not just Chicago, but across the state.
That's right.
And your conversation with the president yesterday. Besides the strike force that is expected any day, what other concrete steps? Because we had 2 mass shootings yesterday.
Yes. So let me begin by saying that too many people in this city and across the state have experienced gun violence and have lost someone that they love, or had someone injured, or they themselves have been injured. And it is incumbent upon elected officials to act to make sure that we are not only addressing it directly in the time period in which these challenges occur, but also ahead of time, to make sure that we're attacking the underlying causes of violence, not just in the city of Chicago, but all across the state, because Chicago's not alone. Rockford, Carbondale, Quincy, Champaign, we have major cities across the state of Illinois that have increased violence, seen increased violence especially during this period of COVID-19. I met with the president yesterday at the White House. We talked about a number of things. I raised the topic of gun violence in Chicago, which obviously is something that's on his mind too. He's had a number of meetings this week on that topic. What I raised to him was I wanted to make sure 2 things: that he knew that the state is fully engaged in fighting the transmission of guns across the border from Indiana, as well as other states surrounding Illinois, all of which have gun laws that are much more lax than those we have here. The straw purchasers, we've got to interdict those straw purchases. And the state of Illinois, through the state police, have been working with the U.S. Attorney, with the ATF, with the Chicago Police Department in that endeavor. But I also wanted him to know that we need, as I may ask for resources from the federal government for other parts of the state, that he was willing to be of assistance to us, and he is. And he's fully aware and focused on the problem of gun violence. I want to be clear to everybody here, because we live in Illinois and in the city of Chicago, and so we only focus on what's happening here, but this is happening across the nation. COVID-19 has brought on so many new challenges for big cities, for big states, and so there are places all across the country that are having the same challenges, and they're talking to the president as well, but Illinois is a focus for him, and I was very pleased with his response.
Governor, on ethics reform, you have touted the ethics reform that passed this past session. Yesterday, Carol Polk resigned and said basically her role as the legislative inspector general was a paper tiger. She said that the legislature is not really interested in reform when it comes to ethics. Can you comment on her assessment of what did or did not happen with this ethics reform?
Well, I have been a leader on ethics reform. I have brought this subject up time and time again with not only the leaders in the legislature, but the many members of the legislature. Look, we always need to work on ethics reform. It's not just a problem, again, in the state of Illinois, but it is something that we know we need in the state of Illinois. Was the bill that passed something that benefits the people of Illinois? Yes, it was. Is it enough? As I've said before, there are provisions of it that I think were terrific. There's some of it that I think should have gone farther. And again, we're going to keep working on this. This isn't the end of this discussion, it's the beginning. But this was a bipartisan effort. There were prosecutors who are in the legislature, involved in the crafting of this ethics reform bill. So I agree that there's more that needs to be done, but this is a decent beginning, and I will continue to work with legislators to make sure that we get more done.
State's Attorney Fox, we hear from you on this gun violence. It does seem as if, and obviously this is not new, previous police superintendents have also kind of been at ensure that those arrested stay in jail. Could you comment on that?
You know, I echo the governor's comments. The violence that we've seen in Cook County has been horrific. And it is, I think, for far too many of us, the political fodder when we see the cry-ons that have children who are dying. It has real impact. I'm not here for political games. We're here to work collectively and collaboratively with our state, local, and federal officials to address the violent crime. What I know is that the men and women of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office are committed to making sure that our communities are safe, that the judiciary that we've been working with on criminal justice reform, particularly bond reform, for 5 years, where we saw a reduction in violent crime after a horrific year in 2016. I often have to remind people in 2016, in which I took office in December of 2016, was one of the bloodiest years since 1999. And we instituted bond reform. Chief Judge Evans was brave and bold and innovative in his approach in 2017, and violent crime went down. In 2018, violent crime went down. 2019, violent crime went down. In 2020, the year that we had a pandemic, an economic crisis unlike anything that we've ever seen, we saw violent crime rise, not just here in Chicago, but as the governor said, throughout the state and throughout this country. What is required in this moment, while there is blood teeming in our streets, is for us to come together, to work with our partners, not just in law enforcement, but in the community, why these bills today matter, so that the people in those neighborhoods who want to see their communities safe will pick up the phone and call the police and know that they're going to get a response, and a justice system that will treat them fairly. That's what's required right now. And so while I respect the superintendent has an incredibly difficult job under incredibly difficult circumstances, my commitment is to the people of Cook County to have a fair and just criminal justice system where the Constitution prevails, not emotion.
Well, this was I would say, whole of legislature endeavor, as well as a whole of government endeavor to try to make sure that that the challenges that were in the original law that were impossible to overcome, that we now could overcome. So we're working very hard. As you know, today, in addition to signing that legislation, we're actually issuing 200 craft grower licenses across the state, and about 67% of those are going to people of color. And so there will be people getting into business in the cannabis industry nearly right away, and I'm very pleased about that. But we have those 3 lotteries that are coming up, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, we want to make sure that they go as smoothly as possible. And so we've been working every day since this bill was passed, really, to try to set up the proper lotteries so that we get the results that, you know, we're all expecting.
Governor, about the auto show, if we could tonight.
Yes. Well, let me begin by saying, thank God things are better, that COVID-19 is... Thank you to all of you who have been vaccinated already, to those of you who need to be vaccinated still. You know, it's available to you anywhere. Almost every doctor has it now available to them to give to you if you want to go to your own physician, to an FQHC, or to any other clinic across the state. We need you to get vaccinated if you have concerns. There's a lot of education that we could provide to you, and confidence, because truly these are safe and effective vaccines. And we do have the Delta variant that is rising across the nation, across the world. So don't think that we're entirely through this yet. We've seen a rise in cases in the state. So with that having been said, I want to say, Craig, that I'm very, very pleased that we're able to reopen McCormick Center. We're able to welcome people to conventions, people from around the world. This is great not only for commerce in the state of Illinois, but for jobs. Union workers are back to work at McCormick Place. And as for me personally, I thoroughly enjoy the auto show. I have enjoyed test driving cars there, seeing the concept cars that sometimes are shown at the auto show. And so I can't wait. I'm going to be there this evening to open the show, but you'll probably see me sneaking in at some other moment to try out one of the cars.
We'll do one more.
Okay, thank you.